Hi everyone, this is Valerie with Tusome Books. I am excited today because I'm having a conversation with Darlyne Bautista. She's the author of 3 books, and today we're going to be talking about Where is Winnipeg, which is a children's book, and I'll just show it to you. Darlyne, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right, so I guess the first thing I would like you to do is maybe just quickly tell us about yourself.
Okay, sure. Firstly, thank you very much for having me, and thank you for holding our books from Anak Publishing. It's really great to have an avenue for us a platform for us to share our works. We don't often get the opportunity, so thank you very much.
My pleasure.
My name is Darlyne Bautista, or Darlyne Bautista, as you already mentioned. I'm currently in Toronto now, completing my PhD in Women and Gender Studies.
Okay.
But before I arrived in Toronto, I was working in Winnipeg, mostly as a community organizer with the organization Action ng Ating Kabataan, which means Action from Our Youth, an organization that we formed in the early 2006, I believe. But really, the work of Action ng Ating Kabataan comes from a lifetime of experience as a second-generation Filipino-Canadian youth. Mm-hmm. So the members of this organization, all of us were either adoptees or young immigrants or children of immigrant parents. So our experience as the gap generation, so to speak, brought us together to delve into issues that are only known through experience. So there's, as the discussion persists today about COVID racism and anti-Asian racism, it was something that was unique and experienced by us in the 1980s and 1990s. Around that time, we are children of factory workers, garment workers, but also it was time of Cold War, experience of boat people, quote unquote boat people arriving from other areas of Southeast Asia. So at the time, the school system, which is predominantly Eurocentric, did not know how to address the abundance of Southeast Asian children that were being born and arriving at this time. So the ways of coping, intergenerational trauma and conflict, racist, cultural, all of those things is something we've had to navigate as children independently. So coming of age in the coming 20s and our 30s, entering academia, professional, social work, care work, healthcare, education, we saw gaps that needed to be filled. And as our community continues to grow, and as the largest immigrant community in Winnipeg, we felt that we could speak to our experience and try to bridge these gaps that exist. And our focus has been in education and mostly working with youth and children, as well as their parents, and being, I guess, a conduit, a bridge between policy and institutions and organizations, which has not always been easy. So writing children's books, I think, is a healthy escape from all of the heavy things that we've had to deal with organizing and as individuals. So yes, that's me in a very long-winded way.
That's awesome, because I think it's important for people to know, about your organization, and that's abbreviated as ANAC, right? A-N-A-C.
Yes, ANAC, which also means my child in our language. We do not have gender, so we don't say son or daughter. We say my child.
Oh,
so
really?
Yeah. So when we're in the public, when we were active, when we are in the community, ANAC is very endearing for them to call us my child.
That is very interesting. The character is actually called Anak, right? Like one of the characters.
Oh, yes, because the grandfather calls the
Oh, that's okay. So my child.
Yeah, my child.
Okay.
Yeah. Or dear.
Perfect. Thank you. So At the back of the book, there's a section that you kind of, or some, I guess, there's an introduction of you, right? Like they kind of talk about who Darlyne Bautista is. And in that section, they mentioned that like it said that Where is Winnipeg is inspired by all the children and families that you have had the pleasure of meeting and volunteering within the community. So I just wanted us to start off by you sharing, why you wrote this book, this specific one, Where is Winnipeg?
Where is Winnipeg? Oh, sure. Where is Winnipeg was very therapeutic to write. Working with children, even before Anak was formed, going to a North End school. I'm very proud North Enders, which has a very strong urban Indigenous and urban immigrant population. So where is Winnipeg is a question that is often encountered by young children who've just arrived. And it's always the question of where did you come from, or where, very othering questions of the child. But so for a child to ask, well, where is Winnipeg? It kind of brings the perspective of not just only the immigrant children that I've worked with, but the Canadian-born children who have been here for generations, not really understand Winnipeg being the center of their world, not really comprehending that perhaps Winnipeg is not the center of their world for other children. So having traveled as well, working with youth, in the Philippines and in Korea. I was an English teacher in South Korea for a bit. So there's always where is Winnipeg? Well, let me tell you, it's in Canada. Well, they know Toronto. They might know Justin Bieber. They might know Avril Lavigne when it was the 90s, but or among the parents, they know Celine Dion, but they don't know where Winnipeg is. So I would always joke with the children, oh, it's where it's cold, or oh, it's where I would never really say it's a city, in a province, in a country. It was always a playful discussion that we had. So those would probably, it'd be in the school system and children that I babysit. It's always an encounter. It's always a question.
Good asking that. So I think that ties very well to my next question. So, I mean, from what you've said, and also from just the name of the book, it's pretty clear what the premise is, but I wanted you to touch on that. What's the story?
Well, the story is about a little girl who realizes she has to suddenly migrate to Winnipeg. And so as she's preparing, she's seeing this world change around her while her parents are packing. Everyone else in the community is being excited for her. But she can't really comprehend why. Why is it so relevant that she has to leave? So she goes around asking, and everyone has a different perception of where Winnipeg is and what that entails for her. And I have to admit that a lot of the characters in the book are actually my relatives. So I do have I hope they don't watch this, but she passed now, but I did have an auntie in the Philippines who ran a little sari-sari store, and she would sell like candies and little grocery items. And so even her missing teeth in the picture, I drew in. I have a cousin who is a pedicab driver who you could see, I recall my time there, seeing how much he struggles, how hard his work is. And so I document some of that bitterness in that. But it's meant for children. So there's also a cat who communicates. There's also a best friend, June, who only knows that maybe it's in the clouds, maybe that's where the planes are. And in the end, it's a bit of a surprise. I touch on family reunification as well. Speaking of the other generations that have come before and have sponsored families to come now. So that the premise of the book touches upon many layers. And if you read any of my research, it probably encapsulates it all in a children form in a very safe way. I hope it's a safe way. Yeah.
Well, I think it is.
Okay.
I really enjoyed the story, and it was very relevant to me. I must say, as an immigrant. Also, you were just talking about the clouds and how the friend said, maybe Winnipeg is because you have to get on a plane. Winnipeg is up there in the sky. And I remember looking at that page, like the illustration and those the clouds, and then it was interesting actually. One of the clouds was sad, right? And out of the cloud's eyes, and the cloud underneath it had another cloud who was taking a shower or having a bath, and it was really cool. So I definitely enjoyed the illustrations, and I noticed that they looked like they have the idea of crayon coloring, and I was curious, like why crayon, or was it intentional to go in that direction?
I think it was because it was my therapy, because it was a fun project to break away from all of the heavy things that we do. And I think there's something very therapeutic, very comforting about just holding a pencil crayon or a crayon. Everything's digitized now. Everything is digital. And as much as I could use Adobe Illustrator as well, or Photoshop or InDesign, there's something about just using a crayon and just drawing with it. And I haven't drawn like cartoons. I didn't really take it all that seriously when I drew it. And so when I started reading this book to the schools, a lot of the teachers were really excited that the children also noticed it was in crayon. So they were inspired that perhaps they could also create a book. So then teachers were making workshops out of the book and inspiring the students to also draw with pencil, crayon and make their own books about their own stories, their own migration stories. So it's very accessible in that way, but it's also very humbling, I guess, because everything looks intimidating now. Digital, especially for children who are not quite children are very technologically advanced, I guess, actually. Yes, so I take that back, but there's something very comforting in using art that way.
Yeah, I definitely agree, because I was reading through and it just almost felt like something that I could have done, It
Right.
was my own art book. It was really cool. I like that. So who's your intended reader? Like, who would you say you would want to read Where is Winnipeg?
Oh, my intended reader when I wrote it at the time was for, the quiet new immigrant Filipino child that is shy to talk and doesn't know, is feeling othered in the classroom. This book was made for those children. So that way a conversation can begin. So when I go into the schools, mostly the inner city and north ends have a high number of Filipino Canadian children in their schools. This book really was a lot of, wow, I know that word, because they don't get that. They don't see that. They have Cinderella. They have all of those other books. Yeah. More so, they have Indigenous books, which is great. But Tagalog, Filipino, where their language is being reflected back at them, is not seen. So, and it's really great to see non-Filipino children of other migrant backgrounds, seeing the book and I know ate, I know kuya, I know those words. So it's really welcoming and heartwarming, I guess, for the new children, that the new students, to come there and feel validated and feel welcomed that way.
Yeah. I think it's a very important book in the sense that it introduces also children who are, like not Filipino, who can then, once they read it and they come, if they're connecting or hanging out with people who are Filipino, then they hear that and they can be like, oh yeah, I read about that, right? Like it has this way of making people feel at ease with each other. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
So a word like pierogi in Winnipeg has become so like
Yeah.
anglicized. And if you go to a Chinese restaurant, they'll say Chinese pierogi. But when you think about it, pierogi is not an English word. It is a word brought by immigrants. And so recent immigrants like Asian, African, Middle Eastern, well, we will start sharing our language and it will be so normalized soon, I think.
Yeah.
That's my hope. That's my hope.
It's my goal. So that's all I have for you. Thank you for doing this with me.
No problem. Thank you very much.